Good morning, buenos dias, and thank you for joining us a little earlier than usual today, hopefully with a coffee or a mimosa close by. On behalf of Mitchell Kaplan, the Miami Book Fair, and all of us at Books and Books, I welcome you to today's virtual morning with internationally best-selling author Camilla Lackberg to discuss her exhilarating new novel, The Golden Cage, published by Knopf. This decadent psychological thriller tells the story of the scorned wife of a billionaire whose dark past erupts from the shadows to aid in her scheme for revenge. Faye and Jack have been sweethearts since business school, but after Faye deserts her own career to support his new company as a waitress by day and strategist by night, she soon finds herself in great wealth at home with her baby, though distant from the business world and increasingly Jack's affections. When Faye discovers his affair, their marriage and her own secrets split open, and nothing will stop her from getting even. Garnering praise from Glamour, O Magazine, and many other best book lists, the New York Times Book Review hails The Golden Cage as smart, unflinching, a novel of female empowerment and triumph over the patriarchy. Camilla Lackberg is the prize-winning best-selling author of the Fjällbacka series, which has sold more than 23 million copies worldwide. In addition to her crime fiction novels, her books include the Super Charlie Children's series and the cookbooks Flavors from Fjällbacka and Celebrations, Food and Love. She's the sixth most read writer in Europe, and her books are sold in over 60 countries and have been translated into 43 languages. She lives in Stockholm, from where she joins us today. In conversation with Camilla tonight is Chris Bohjalian, the #1 New York Times bestselling author of 21 books, including his most recent, The Red Lotus. Chris was set to visit Books and Books right before the pandemic changed our lives, so it's with great pleasure that I welcome him to our virtual broadcast this morning. I first met Chris in Chicago during Book Expo many, many years ago at a small publisher dinner where he engaged a then very inexperienced young bookseller in easy conversation, and I've been a fan of his ever since. Among his many other books are Midwives, The Flight Attendant, which is set to become a limited TV series, The Guest Room, The Sandcastle Girls, and The Double Bind. He lives in Vermont, from where he joins us this morning. Throughout this morning's broadcast, don't forget to ask your questions by clicking the Ask a Question button at the bottom of the screen, and you can find The Golden Cage, The Red Lotus, and any other book you might need for purchase at Books and Books below by pressing the green button. Every purchase you make helps keep Books and Books up and running during these times. And now, without further ado, I would like to bring our guests to the stage. Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello, Camilla. Hello, Christine. It is a pleasure to see both of you this morning. Excuse my laryngitis. I have to tell you, I am an enormous fan of The Golden Cage. I loved every word, every page, and I'm not alone. If you look at the back of the book, I'm joined by Christina Alger, Lisa Unger, and Karen Slaughter. Camilla, let's dive right in.
Yeah, sure.
What was the inspiration for this spectacularly fun, literary smart novel?
Well, it actually started with me being a huge fan of Faye Weldon's book, The Lives and Loves of a She-Devil. I've read and reread it ever since I was a teenager, but for the last 10 years, I started to think, what would a modern she-devil do? How would a modern she-devil react? And that's where the whole thought process started. And it kind of collided with me really missing a genre that was so popular in the 80s when I was a teenager. I used to binge read books like Tracy's Revenge, Lace, Lucky, Sidney Sheldon, Judith Krantz.
I love these references. Scruples.
What happened to them? And they were full of fantastic, powerful women who would take over empires and eat men for breakfast and wear Chanel doing it. And that's genres kind of disappeared. And those heroines have disappeared in the book genre. So that was something I really wanted to bring back.
Faye, your
Yeah,
heroine, is fantastic. She is unbelievably multifaceted and unbelievably interesting, and she is morally complex.
she
Would
is.
would you talk a little bit about Faye's origins? Because when I read this book, I fell in love with it, and I fell in love with it in the same way that I fell in love with the girl with the dragon tattoo, in the same way that I fell in love with Gone Girl, in the same way that I just binge watched the American TV show Succession. So tell me about Faye.
I love the references. I love all the things you mentioned also. So that was great to hear. Um, Faye is has some similarities with me. She comes from Fjällbacka, like she comes from
Should I be scared?
no, well, a little bit. uh, I have a couple of ex-husbands, but they're all still alive. So far, as long as they behave. But she comes from humble beginnings, but she's smart and she goes to university and educates herself. And she starts out as someone who's very strong, but is slowly broken down gradually by the love for a man and the sacrifices that she does every day by day, week by week, month by month, year by year. And I think that's what fascinates me with Faye, that uh, I kind of wanted to show that even strong women can be broken or at least bent, as in Faye's case. She's not broken, she's just bent. But she has this inner power that I really love about her.
She does have an inner power. And actually, one of the things that we don't talk about in this book often enough when we talk about it publicly is the small, petty degradations
Yeah.
she endures. It's almost death by a million cuts in
Mhm.
terms of the horrific and abusive way that her husband treats her.
Yeah.
But it's not the sort of over the top abuse that we would expect. It's more subtle and a little bit more horrifying. Would you talk a little bit about that? Because I found that really touching and really moving and really haunting.
Yes, because I mean, one topic that is, of course, always very, very important to address is domestic abuse, physical abuse. But a lot of us can't relate to that. I've never had anyone raise their hand to me. I've never been in a physically abusive relationship, but I have experienced the like every day by day being broken by feeling inferior or the constant gaslighting. Oh dear, you must have forgotten that, or I did tell you that I was going there. All the little things. I think gaslighting is one of the bigger things that we do experience. And I can identify so much more with that. And there are so many women who can identify with that. But it was also important for me to address that this is not just men issue. I don't like the kind of feminism where we kind of say that, oh, it's all the men's fault. They are the only ones who have the power to change. If they change, everything is going to be great. We have a big responsibility too. And one thing that we do and that Faye does in the book is that we love so much, that we sacrifice so much, because we kind of think that if I do this for him, if I give this up, if I just give him a little bit more, if I'm a better wife, if I'm a better housekeeper, a better mother, it's going to come back to me rewarded later. But the problem is it often doesn't happen. The reward doesn't come anywhere, down the road. And then he leaves you for the secretary when the kids are teenagers.
You know, the body shaming, the cleaning shaming, the
Yeah.
parental raise, the shaming was what I found so haunting and so moving and so real, just so unbelievably real.
I hear comments like this every week from couples around me, from men around me to their wives. I see this and hear this constantly.
Yeah. Now, how much of this book, if at all, had you outlined, or did you begin with just a very vague premise?
I never outline very much. I never have. As a writer, I'm very chaotic in in one way. I have colleagues who have like the whole book on post-it notes on the wall, scene by scene, before they start to write even one word. I have maybe 5% of the book in my head when I start writing, and I write chronologically. So the way that you read the book is the way I write the book, but I always know my end destination. I always know where I want to end up. I just don't know what the road there looks like.
Okay, first of all, the ending is fantastic. We're
Thank
obviously
you.
not going to go there in this conversation, but the ending is fantastic. And I love that E.L. Doctorow quote. Writing a novel is driving at night with the headlights on. You can only see 200 feet ahead of
Yeah,
you,
yeah,
but you always know that eventually you'll get
yeah,
where you're going.
yeah,
Um, what about Jack, her husband?
yeah.
We begin with Faye. Did Jack get darker and darker, lighter and lighter as the book progressed in your mind?
He actually got darker and darker. I started despising and hating him more and more, but he's not, because we tend to see the bad guys as, you know, the guy dressed in black in the woods with the yellow teeth, and we think that we can identify the bad guys by looking at them, and that's a mistake a lot of women do. I mean, evil comes in a lot of shapes and forms, and they can come in someone charming, nice, good looking, successful, someone who can actually behave like a human being for quite some time before their true nature arises. And I think we've all known people like that. They know how to speak, how to behave, until they don't want to anymore.
How many men like Jack have you come across in your life in business and publishing as a successful novelist?
I would say a lot. Um, I'm pretty good though at standing up for myself, and I'm pretty good at talking back. But I have been in many situations where men kind of hawk all the attention. For example, I've been doing seminars with male colleagues who are just like ignoring the fact that there's someone else on stage. I'm pretty good at handling that by now, but it happens over and over again. Well, female colleagues are often very inclusive, or always, I would say. I don't have any examples of the opposite. Very inclusive, very generous, and that is a much better situation.
Tell me about the title, The Golden Cage. I love the title.
Well, it's you know, being trapped in a luxurious environment, because the environment in the book is very luxurious, hence the me flirting with the Sidney Sheldon genre from the 80s. I wanted something that was really over the top. And in today's society, so much is about the surface. We look at Instagram, we look at blogs, and we see people taking pictures in their beautiful homes and beautiful clothes with a new handbag, unboxing it on video, of course. And we think that, oh, they must be so happy. And I don't know where we started thinking like this, but we never know what goes on beyond, you know, behind the curtain. And people might be just as miserable and evil and mean, even if they're doing it in a very gorgeous environment.
The two companies, um, Jack and Faye together, start a company, and then of course later on, Faye will start a company.
Yeah.
There's specific inspirations in your life for those really, really interesting companies.
Well, the thing is that I have a degree, I have a background in business. I have a university degree in marketing, and I worked as a marketer for several years before I became a writer. And I've
Me
always
too.
been very, yeah. And it's a great background to have as a writer. And I've always been very interested in the marketing and the business side of it as well. And I've always considered myself as an author and a businesswoman. And I've also started an investment company, Invest in Her, to promote businesses run by females, because in Sweden, as well as probably in the States and as probably the rest of the world, women don't get far near as much investment capital as men do. So I wanted to, on my little corner of the world, help change that.
I've always viewed Sweden as so remarkably progressive certainly compared to America. So I'm sad to hear that's needed, but I'm thrilled that you're doing that. Um, how how different is it to write a book like The Golden Cage compared to a continuing series?
Well, I was scared shitless, pardon my French, but I had done 10 Fjällbacka books, and it's quite comfortable to be in a series because you just
And you're from
after
Fjällbacka, correct?
I'm from Fjällbacka, so it's my hometown. My mother still lives there, and I know it so well, and I know the characters in the series so well. I mean, I've lived with Eric and Patrick for 15 years, so they're in my comfort zone. But that's exactly why I wanted to do something totally different, to challenge myself as a writer, to keep developing as a writer. When you're not scared anymore, you're not developing. You need to feel those little butterflies in your stomach if you're going to evolve. So that's what I wanted to do. But I didn't actually get the big hurrahs when I told my team and my publishing house and everyone around me that I was doing something totally different, and something that sounded as crazy as this. But I managed to convince them, and I'm so thrilled that the audience has really understood what I wanted to do, and I love Faye. I love her, and it's become like a concept. I have friends who refer to her if they do something in their life, if they have a choice to make, and say, "Oh, I did a Faye today." I even have guy friends saying that I did a Faye today. I walked into the boss and I told him I did such a Faye today, and I love that.
I love that too. Will we see more Faye?
Yes, there's a second book already finished, and it came out in Sweden in April, and it's now coming out in Europe and one country after another. So that's going probably next year in the US, and I'm going to write the third one.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I'm going to write the third one. I just decided that a couple of weeks ago. It was only supposed to be two, but Faye has become so popular, and most importantly, I love Faye, so I want to write more about her.
Oh, there should definitely be a Faye trilogy. As H.L. Mencken said, um, four is too many and two is too few. Three is just right.
I love the number 3. It's
Yeah.
such a nice, yeah.
Do you have a title for the follow-up to The Golden Cage?
Wings of Silver in Swedish. I don't know, sometimes they change their titles when they translate them, but in Sweden it's called Wings of Silver. So the third one,
It's lovely.
bronze something, obviously. I just haven't figured that out yet.
Did The Golden Cage have a different title in Sweden?
No, it's called the Golden Cage.
It
And
was
most
called-
countries have actually just translated it. So most countries have liked that title.
Yeah. Um, when you were crafting Faye, how much of her childhood did you know when you were beginning to write the book?
I just knew in the beginning, I just knew it was horrible. And I knew that she would have a very close bond with her mother, and that her father was going to be the one that was the horrible character. But I didn't have the scenes until I started writing them. And there's a scene where the father is abusing the mother in front of the children, and the a chip of a tooth is knocked out. And that was probably for me one of the strongest scenes to write. As I said, I've never experienced anything like that. I had a very safe childhood, and I've never experienced as a woman, as an adult either. But it enrages me. I know this happens every day in so many homes, and it absolutely enrages me.
Oh, in Vermont, bucolic, idyllic Vermont, our dirty little secret is domestic violence. If you are
Yeah.
going to be murdered in Vermont, you are
Yeah.
going to be a woman. You are going to know your murderer intimately. It's just
And,
the
yeah, in
reality of
Sweden,
Vermont.
9 of 10 murders are committed by someone, and the most dangerous place is your home. That's the most dangerous place.
Certainly, that's true in Vermont. Um,
I also have to
given,
say that it's been much worse under Corona and the quarantine. The statistics have gone up for domestic abuse in Sweden, and I'm guessing in US as well.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
Um, along those lines, do readers ever say to you, "Faye goes too far"?
Yeah, I have had some readers that have been upset with me, and I'm not going to do any spoilers, but there are some. She does some things that aren't okay morally or according to the law. But that's the thing about Faye, that she does things that are so out of character for a woman. And I had one reader who wrote to me a week after the book had come out in Sweden, and she said that first, when I read the book, I did not like Faye at all. I hated her. I did not like her. But then I started thinking, the reader is saying this, that what if she had been a man? And I realized that I read books like that every day. I see movies like that, every night, and I don't even react to it. In movies, men are killing 20 guys, 40 guys. We see Liam Neeson in Taken bringing back his daughter, killing people everywhere. And we're like, go Liam. But when a woman does that, it's very provoking.
Why is that?
Because women are supposed to be loving, nurturing, forgiving. We're always supposed to turn the other cheek. We're not supposed to be aggressive or revengeful or violent. That goes against everything we attribute to a woman, a good woman. Men are allowed. It starts already in kindergarten when the guys pull the girl's hair, and the teachers or the parents, the adults, tell the girl that, oh, he's just doing that because he likes you.
He thinks you're cute.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
cute. It's boys will be boys.
Yeah. How would you introduce Faye at a dinner party?
I wouldn't have to introduce Faye to dinner party. I mean, Faye would come in and she would just, looking fabulous, and both men and women would totally focus on her. She's the kind of woman that when she enters a room, she looks like she has her own built-in spotlight. So no one ever have to introduce Faye.
I love that. Okay, when you were doing the minutia of this book, the the opulence, the conspicuous consumption, was that really fun to just sort of research or just sort of play with all of those Sidney Sheldon sort of tropes and what would be in the pantry? What kind of coffee do they drink? What is the dress?
I love that because I've always been very fascinated by that world. I mean, I'm not at all brought up in that world. I grew up with two elderly parents, pre-retired. I mean, we weren't poor, but we were very, very, very far from rich. And as an adult, when I've become a successful writer, I don't belong to like upper class in Stockholm, because you have to be born into it. So you can never belong if you're not born into it. But I do get invited into that world, and it's utterly fascinating.
Are there television or movie plans for the Golden Cage?
There might be.
Okay. It would be
Yeah.
fantastic.
I would love that.
I can see it both as an 8-hour limited series,
Yeah.
not a mini series, since we know that there might be a second or a third book, but as a limited series. And I can also see it as just a to die for 2-hour thriller. It would just be utterly, utterly fantastic.
I would love it. I would love it. So keep your fingers crossed.
And toes. Absolutely. Christina, may I turn it over to you for questions from the audience?
An audience, you can ask anything you want.
Absolutely.
I have absolutely no filter whatsoever, so you can ask anything you want about my life or about my writing or whatever.
So do you feel that things are actually changing for women in this time?
I do. I was hopeful, but then in the last years, we have seen a lot of countries going backwards.
Mhm.
We have a lot of racism in Europe. New winds are blowing here, and that affects women as well. In Poland, for example, I don't know if they already have, or if they are going to take away women's right to abortions, which is a right that Polish women have had for many years. So it's really going backwards. And that scares me.
What do you want for women? If you could say, like, what would you want, aside from obviously equality, but what do you want a woman to feel and have?
I want, well, I have two daughters. I have 4 children. I have 2 sons and I have 2 daughters. So I can do a lot of social experimenting on them, which is fantastic. And my oldest daughter is 16, and I actually started thinking about these. I haven't thought much about feminism or issues like that before in my life. It wasn't until I turned 40 and my daughter became a bit older, and I realized that, okay, this is the world she's going out into. And I realized that she doesn't have the same options as my sons have. So that's the first thing. I want my daughter to have all the same options to succeed or fail or make it or screw up on the same terms as men. She does, I mean, and I also think that women need to take more space. We can't put all of this on men and say that you guys fix this, because we're part of the problem. We need to stop being so damn self-sacrificing. We need to take care. We need to be independent. We need to realize that the only person you can depend on 100% is yourself. Never be dependent on a husband or a boyfriend. I've just watched Dirty John's season 2, the Betty Broderick story.
Yeah, it's great.
That should be a warning sign for you women. I mean, that's
sure.
Don't ever do that.
Sure. I also
stay at home with the kids if you stay at home with the kids for 20 years and you choose to do that, it's a fantastic job. I don't look down upon the job of being a stay-at-home mom. It's the toughest job in the world, and I would never be able to do it. After 2 hours, I would run screaming from my home. But if you do that, you have to realize that you need to have a backup plan, some kind of security, some kind of safety.
I also think that the camaraderie between women, I think that is very special, and something that we have to work on, instead of being pitted against one another, actually joining forces and giving a leg up to each other. You know,
we need to change the way we're thinking, because men are very good at supporting each other. Women, as you say, we compete instead. If you have a board, board in a company with 10 seats at the table, and there's 1 woman and 9 men, the other women are going to compete for the 1 woman seat, not for all 10 seats. They only compete with the 1 woman.
100%.
And that's the kind of way we think, and we're raised to think that way. And that's our responsibility as mothers, to change that way. We need to teach our sons to be respectful to women, and we need to teach our daughters to really step into the world and be independent.
Yes, bravo. Well said. So you talked about the butterflies in your stomach. Can you talk about that a little bit more? Like what that is, why it is that you feel it's so important to feel that? Because I feel that every time we go to a virtual event. It's like this is a microphone going to work.
But it's a bit of adrenaline rush to do something that you don't know if you can do or not. I mean, it's fantastic to have a series that I already know that a lot of readers are waiting for a new book, etc. That's a very safe place to be as a writer when you reach that point and when you reach that platform. But I do think that being scared is what makes us evolve. And that doesn't matter if it's cooking, or if you never try a new dish, if you only make the 5 dishes that you are professional at now, then you never learn any more dishes. And that applies to everything.
Can you both speak just a little bit as to how the pandemic, the being quarantined, how it might have influenced you personally in these thoughts about, mortality, existence, future. Can you just address that a little bit?
Camilla, would you like to go first?
Yeah, I can do that. Well, if to start with the everyday life, as a writer, you're not as affected as a lot of other people, because my everyday life, my working life, is sitting at home in my pajamas. So that thing really didn't change. I was probably more equipped than a lot of other people to handle the whole quarantine stay at home thing. But of course, this whole situation has made you think differently about a lot of things. There were so many things that we took for granted that we can't take for granted anymore. I actually think it looks strange when I watch when I look at Instagram now and I see people on an airplane. I'm like, what are they doing? Why are they on an airplane? It looks strange to me. So I do think we're going to change our behavioral patterns a lot after this thing is over.
As Camilla said, as a writer, it didn't change the logistics of what I do. I finished my 2021 novel. I finished my 2022 novel. So my next two books are done. I wrote a play. But here's what's different. In the United States, 165,000 people are dead.
Yeah.
The TV series, The Flight Attendant, had to stop filming for 6 months.
Yeah.
The play I had scheduled to open this summer obviously canceled. My daughter, well, she's an actor. So all of her work in the spring and the summer is just gone, and there's nothing lined up for the autumn. My wife is a fine artist and had a massive show canceled, and 3 of her galleries are going out of business. We know the plight of independent bookstores. We know the sense of dread that Camilla was just talking about when we see people on airplanes. One of the most moving images I saw on Instagram in April and May, speaking as an individual who reveres flight attendants for what they do, were the Instagram posts of flight attendants in their jump seats reading books, because there's no one on the airplane. It's a flight attendant and a 100-seat regional jet, and there's one person in the fetal position in an N95 mask and a shield who's just afraid to move. And so they just would be on their planes reading. And I just collected those images on my Instagram phone, just utterly fascinated.
Can you both speak as to the power of books, what books have meant to you, and perhaps also, do you have a neighborhood bookstore, and what is your relationship to bookstores as well?
Well, I actually, well, my love for books go way back, and it's thanks to my father. My father was the biggest book lover I've ever met. He's been gone now for over 20 years. And he had a huge bookshelf at home, always filled with books, and he was always constantly reading. He would read 2 or 3 books at the same time, and he would read by cooking. He would read while being in the bathroom. He would read while walking around in the house. He was always reading. So I caught that bug from him, and I started picking books from his bookshelf. And I think one of the first ones I picked was Death on the Nile by Agatha Christie. So that's where my love for crime stories started. And all 3 sisters have gotten this love for books from our father. So for us, books is very much him embodied. Well, we always think about our dad when we buy a book or we read something that's really great. And we always, all 3 of us think that, oh, I must tell dad about this book, even like 20-25 years after he's dead. And then we remember that, well, that's going to be a little bit hard. So for me, the love of books is something that's very closely connected to the love for my father. And the bookstores. I love a bookstore. I used to like live in a bookstore when I was a child, and I was best friends with the librarian in Fjällbacka. She loved me. She was an old little lady with, gray hair and the classical librarian. And I would come every week from like being 6 or 7 years old, and she had always prepared a pile of books for me that she wanted me to read, and I would drag those home and read those in a week and come back, and she had a new pile prepared for me. So it's something that's really always been a huge part of my life.
And you,
When I was
Chris?
in 8th grade, my family moved from a suburb of New York City to Miami, Florida, which at the time was another suburb of New York City. And Tuesday, I started school at my new middle school, and then right after school, I went to see my new orthodontist, a sadist who would turn out if ever there was one. He gave me some orthodontic headgear that looked like the business end of a backhoe, and I had to wear it 4 hours a day. Couldn't speak when I was wearing it, wasn't allowed to sleep when I was wearing it, so after school,
Wow.
I would put in my headgear and I would go to the Hialeah Miami Lakes Public Library, and I would read.
Wow.
And I read all the books that an 8th grade boy in the late 1970s was likely to read. Stephen King had started publishing his remarkable Grand Guignol. I read Peter Benchley's Jaws, William Peter Blatty's The Exorcist. And it was there for the first time that I also read To Kill a Mockingbird and Joyce Carol Oates' Expensive People. And I still remember the first sentence of Expensive People. And I don't know if you've read Expensive People, Camilla, but oh my God.
I read it. I need to read it, yeah.
One of the great first sentences of all time. 5 words. I was a child murderer. And the next 3 pages deconstruct that one short sentence. Is the narrator an adult who on a regular basis murders small children? Or an adult who one time as a child accidentally killed someone? I was a child murderer.
Wow.
From those books, I learned so much and just fell in love with certain kinds of fiction, whether it was a courtroom drama, whether it was an unreliable narrator. And as for bookstores, well, okay, The Red Lotus was published on March 17th,
I know.
the day
I remember.
bookstores were shutting down. I've got the most lovely letters of apology from bookstores saying, okay, we got back to the store in May, or we got back to the store in April. We're sorry we never unpacked the boxes with the books, but your next one, we're on it.
And we got those beautiful T-shirts you had made too.
I did, yeah.
Oh God, yeah, that was really.
Taking a picture of it now.
Do you have a picture of the T-shirts?
No, I took a picture of us now.
Oh, thank you.
We closed March 19th. That's when we closed, and
that's the date that Lily King. That's the date that Lily King and I were going to be there. Yeah. So along those lines, let us not forget the reason why we are here is if you have not read The Golden Cage, click on your screen and order it from Books and Books right now. Please. It is utterly fantastic. We get to talk to you at this great Sunday morning literary salon because of books and their graciousness and Mitchell Kaplan's and Christina's kindness. So, whether you buy The Golden Cage and add to it Liz Moore's Long Bright River or Darling Rose Gold or Separation Anxiety by Laura Zigman or any of these other wonderful books that came out in February or March and might have been swamped by the pandemic, this is a great morning to connect with Books and Books and stack your bookshelf.
Thank you.
And I need to start reading your books, Chris.
There'll never be an exam, I promise.
Please. I'll love a good competition otherwise.
Well, Chris writes great female characters.
Yeah.
So
thank you.
You should speak to that a little bit.
Thank you. Well,
although I know you have laryngitis, so you don't want to speak too much.
I do, but I do love writing across gender, in part because my gender is so frequently despicable. I mean, in the play that I just finished, one older flight attendant says to a younger flight attendant, Emily, men are harriers. Make no mistake, that's what men are.
Yeah. Well.
I
Can't
met a
come
few
to-
nice ones too.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Hence
Thank
being
you.
married 3
Yeah.
times.
Thank you. Yeah. Mitchell Kaplan, and me accepted.
Yeah, there are
Exactly.
good ones out there. Not
You
perfect,
too.
mind you, but good ones.
Okay, Mitchell. Okay, I do have to tell you one great Books and Books Mitchell Kaplan story. The first time I ever appeared at Mitchell Kaplan's wonderful Books and Bookstore was in the smaller
On the corner.
Coral Gate, the smaller corner store,
Uh-huh.
and it was a Sunday evening event. And that day, Mitchell broke up a dog fight to protect the dogs and one of his kids, and he still hobbled into my event to host it with a bazillion stitches in his legs.
Wow. I didn't know that story. That sounds a lot like him.
That's what a
Yes.
good guy. That's what kind of a good guy he is.
He really is a very special human being.
My weirdest bookshop story is that I had a signing. I had a new book coming out, and I was doing a huge signing when my daughter, who's now 16, was only 6 weeks old, and I was like, okay, I need to bring her, so we'll just do this. And of course, she decided that feeding time was exactly the moment I sat down to start signing. So I actually have pictures of this. She's under a blanket eating while I put books on top of her and sign. But she's doing okay. Not
that's
that much
great.
therapy.
Yeah. Okay, but
that's
okay,
great.
Poland and the United States, if they have their ways, and if the wrong people win in the next 10 years, that would never happen again.
Yeah, I know.
It's a great story.
So, Camilla, are there any books that you'd like to recommend to us by female authors that you have been reading? Anything
Oh,
that you would like us to be aware of?
I have so many favorites. One more recent is, well, I think it's about a year old, maybe a year and a half, is Leila Slimani's Lullaby.
Okay.
It's
Yes.
a thriller that is very different from other thrillers, and it's so dark and it's so scary, and I absolutely loved it. I do, of course, love Gone Girl, and I'm at a place now where I'm rereading books I used to read a couple of years ago. I just read Let's Talk About Kevin again by Lionel Shriver. And I read Doris Lessing's The Fifth Child. Siri Hustvit, Vet How I Loved, is a favorite that I just reread 2 weeks ago. So I'm at a phase now where I don't read so many of the books that just came out. I'm revisiting old friends.
If you've never read,
Books I've not mentioned are fantastic.
I've written them down. If you've never read Days of Abandonment by Elena Ferrante,
No, I haven't.
that
I know
was
which
one
one
of
it
that
is.
was her first, and the rage that she captures in that lead character is just amazing. So it was
I love
interesting.
angry women, so I
Me
need to
too. I love angry women as well. Sorry, but see, I had to apologize for loving.
You know what bitch stands for, right? You know what it's short for?
No,
Babe in total control of herself.
I had never heard that. Okay, I like that. I'm going to use that. So you are the 6th most read author in Europe?
Yeah.
That is phenomenal.
It's a little weird. I still think that only my mother reads my books, so it's a bit strange sometimes.
Oh my gosh. So I just, I want to thank both of you so much for being with us this morning.
Thank you
for giving us some insight into your wonderful new book. And Chris, thank you so much for joining us with your laryngitis. And I hope you feel better. And I really hope that we will see both of you in the United States at Books and Books in real life someday soon. And
looking forward to it.
And stay well. Keep writing those remarkable books. And thank you so much for joining us at Books and Books. Thank you to our viewers who are watching.
Thank you, both of you.
Thank you, Camilla. Thank you, Christina. Great to see both of you. Cheers.
Bye.